This lesson, this is 711 Boylston Street. I will make this model available when I'm finished with it. The walls and columns have been modeled. What you see is the location terrain from which we determined solar north. So I'm going to hide the layers that those are on. Give you a quick tour of this model. Generally, when you're adding to a model, it's good to have on only the drawing layers, the layers you absolutely need. So, for purposes of the ceiling, the floor slab profile that we modeled for the second floor, and for that matter, even the columns are appropriate to hide here because it'll just make it that much easier to see what's going on. So once this is leveraging or taking advantage of grouped geometry in SketchUp. I've looked at many of the models from the advanced lighting class, and what the mistake many people are making is double-clicking on the walls and going in and modifying that group in order to create windows. In fact, you want to create windows outside of that group so that the geometry doesn't merge with the geometry of the walls, which you meticulously into which you meticulously inserted all these openings. So the procedure is the same for one window, one wall. I'm going to draw a very simple window pane with a window frame with a simple panel of glass in the middle. Naturally, you could elaborate on that if you wanted to. Let's, from a 3D view, so hopefully by now you're comfortable working in a view like this. I'm going to create a rectangle that's going to be the outline of my window, or the boundaries of the perimeter of my window. Alright, so I have this surface. Let's take that surface and offset it 4 inches just to start to create a frame. There's some tricks that I'm going to employ. I'm going to take the middle surface, which I'm later going to paste back into the component that I'm modeling now. Control X copies it to the clipboard. Now I'm just selecting the surface that I want to be the window frame, and I'm going to pull it 4 inches to the exterior. This is very critical now. Triple click on that. Create a component with it. We want to make that a component, and we want to say large window. Okay, this is window is a case where you will want to nest components into the larger components. So the window is further divided into the window frame, and I'll show you how we deal with that. First, we create a component called large window. Okay, and we know that this is a component. Now, change view component edit to hide rest of model. The advantage of doing that is that when you double click on a component, you can edit it in this isolated mode. The next step here, which is critical, while I'm in the component, this geometry I just created is unprotected. So you triple click it again, 1, 2, 3. And we're going to make this a component. So I'm nesting a component into a component called window frame into the large window component that I just created. Alright? Let us edit, paste in place from the clipboard that rectangle that can now represent our glass panel. I will directly double click this and make it a component. Edit, make component, and call it glass panel. You could give it dimensions, you could give it a much more meaningful name. So the advantage of that is now that when I'm modifying this glass panel, I can deal with it in this isolated mode. You have to develop some level of confidence that you of where you are in the component. I'm going to select this and extrude it. I don't need to. I could leave it as a flat panel, but I'm going to, for purposes of geometry, I'm going to extrude it to 1/8 of an inch, which means that if I want to assign material to it, let me set up a tray with a material palette and just bring it out here. Choose glass, choose a translucent glass. So when I apply this material, I have to do it to both sides because I've given it some thickness. Right click, close that component. So we have a component within a component. That component, if I right click and say entity info, that's a solid component called, you have to collapse these menus at times in order for them to reveal a little annoying, isn't it? Alright. Let me explain what we have now. We still have the walls. The walls are a separate element. This guy is a component called let's add entity info to tray 1. So we can see. Don't know why that's not showing up. We'll have to deal with that afterwards. So this is a component. If I double click it, I can modify it, and now I have two nested components here. This is a frame and that's glazing. If I double click on the frame, I can apply materials to it. Let's add materials to back to my tray. Let's select wood, cherry, and I can paint the window frame. You have to paint all the sides manually. There's no very simple way of doing it. There is a way of doing it. I forget exactly what it is. It allows you to, I think maybe if you paint outside of the component. So there we have a wood frame. Close this component. We have a glass panel within that, and the whole thing makes up my window frame. And if I were to select that and move it, I could do so easily without taking any geometry with it. Critical to understand this. All the rest of the doors, glass doors, transoms that go into these openings are modeled the same way. Naturally, you could take the object and push it, move it into the wall opening, say 4 inches, perhaps another 2 inches, so that it generates a little sill around the perimeter. But that's the idea. Thanks.